What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of a Thinking Man's podcast. If you're listening now on YouTube, please subscribe to the Muscle Media Network channel. Like the video, share it with a friend, send it around, leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think. Ring the bell so you're notified every time we post. My man Tommy Styles is pumping out multiple videos on the channel every week, bringing you some different segments, different perspectives from different folks. So you don't want to miss that. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Thanks to the owner, Chris Cirillo. He supports Tommy and I. He supports the channel and the network. So we're grateful for that. Check them out, KodiakBodybuildingApparel.com. Tommy Styles, what's up, brother? How are you doing?
Good, man. It's beautiful weather out in Arizona. Had a little emergency vet run with my dog this week, but all is well. So he's healing and living the cone life. But that and the stitches will be all done on Friday and upward from there.
Got into the Anadrol stash?
Yeah, he took too much Tren and had an accident. So
Blood pressure got a little high. No, that's good. It's good to hear. All right, so we're going to do kind of similar to what we've been doing, where we kind of just bring a handful of topics and bounce back and forth and discuss them. More so than just kind of sticking on one topic for an hour. At this point, if you've been following the channel, we've touched on pretty much everything in bodybuilding you possibly could. So I don't know at this point that we could fill a full hour or a full episode in one topic. So Tommy and I each brought a handful of a handful of them. You want me to go first, or you got one?
I'll get us started with being that it's the holiday season and people get to enjoy foods that they might not get to have throughout the year. Yeah. What is your all-time favorite holiday food? No rules. You're not a bodybuilder. What would you eat?
All right, so I'm just gonna immediately wipe off Thanksgiving because I don't really, turkey is just white meat to me. Like we eat that 6 times a day. I like some of the sides on Thanksgiving, but I don't need them. I could do without them. I'm more, if we're talking food, I don't know if this even qualifies, but I'm mostly a dessert guy. I have a pretty big sweet tooth. So pumpkin pie is probably going to be up there for me. I like pumpkin pie, and I would say maybe like Christmas cookies. I don't know if that's like holiday food, but man, I would say I don't know. This will probably only qualify as holiday food for my family, but every year my family, we have I have a huge family, and my aunt and uncle host for the whole family. And every year they do like prime ribs for everybody. And they'll do like prime ribs and usually like shrimp scampi as a side. So that when I see that or think that, I think Christmas. So that's kind of I put down several plates of that when I'm not in prep. So that's probably it for me.
Yeah, if prime rib's an option at anything I'm at, I'm stacking it on my plate. We have I don't really see my family now that I'm on the other side of the country, but I remember one side of the family, it was kind of like a potluck, like everybody would bring something and there would be a line to go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would bring crock pot full of like warm queso or warm stuff that you could put on chips. And I always liked that because I just think the idea of piling a plate like a Jenga style with as much stuff as you can is just the most fun. But yeah, there's this dessert that I think my mom knows how to make it, and then one of my aunts makes it too. It's got the bottom is an Oreo crust, and then it's got mint chocolate chip ice cream with Oreos in it, and then it's got a bunch of like little wafers on top of it, of like I think mint wafers. It's pretty good. It would absolutely destroy my stomach, but I would go in on it. But that was, I'm not even a big dessert guy, but that one dessert is something that's pretty good.
Where are you on like apple pie? I feel like that's such a staple for most people.
I'm just not an apple pie, not pumpkin pie. I'm not really a pie guy.
Okay. All right.
I like the ice cream dessert style stuff, but
yeah. Yeah, apple pie.
Carrot cake,
I
can't
feel like
stand it.
apple pie is a little overrated for me. That's kind of why I brought it up. I feel like
Yeah.
that's one's number one, and it's just like pretty bland. But uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like any other traditions. I'm mostly just picking at the desserts, to be honest. Um, when I was younger, I think my mom would do like a baklava around Christmas too, which is like, you know what that is? I think that might be Greek or something.
I've heard of it. I don't know what it looks like.
Dude, it's unbelievable. You got to get yourself some. Um, out here, at least, I don't know if do you guys have diners out there?
What, like a old school mom and pop type
Yeah.
diner?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few.
They're liable to have one or have some of that. If you can find it, it's unbelievable. I wouldn't even really know how to describe it. It's kind of like a layered flaky dessert that has like it's usually covered in like some type of syrup, and there's like a cream that's built in there somewhere, and then some like chopped walnuts. Anyway, yeah, that's up there too. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one though. I mean, what do you do in terms of clients? Like, how do you tell these guys to navigate holidays? Everyone's got their own kind of their own process.
I'm pretty simple, don't complicate it. Whatever day your
Yeah.
function, event, whatever falls on, go at it. Enjoy yourself. If you want to replace your entire day's plan with just food from that, whatever you're going to have, that's fine. If ideally, I would say have a couple meals off your meal plan, because most people usually eat in the afternoon. So if you got up, had a couple of basic meals, kept your metabolism moving, and maybe filled yourself up a little bit. So if you are someone that can go off the rails, maybe you don't. But just it's pretty basic human stuff. Like if you're gonna sit there and eat until you are blistering full and you feel miserable, you get whatever's supposed to happen after that. The weight's up, your blood sugar's up, you feel like garbage for 4 days. Like that's you caused that. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with having food and enjoying food, but the key is to December 26th, if you're celebrating on the 25th, get back on plan. Go do some cardio the next day. Go for a walk. I mean, just the problem with the holidays is everybody extends it. Like Christmas turns into an entire week. Thanksgiving turns into like all the way till after New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
We're just talking 1 or 2 days here, really. If you just plan ahead and have some responsibility and control like you have most of the year, you're gonna be all right.
Yeah, I like a general sentiment of just don't eat like an asshole. I'll usually will say something like that in somebody's update. I used to overcomplicate it about myself and about my clients. I've definitely been guilty of telling people and doing this myself, like telling people like, okay, if you're going to eat, let's say dinner as a holiday dinner, Thanksgiving, Christmas, do protein and veggies the whole day. Like no carbs the whole day leading up to it. That's probably just over the top. I don't think that's needed. And then, now I'm kind of in the same spot. Like if you're going to eat, whether it's one or two holiday meals in a day, like I'm mostly am more so I'm at this point, I only help guys, and I'm really more so worried about the guys under eating, like, having one regular meal, stuffing their face for 2 hours and then not eating the rest of the day. Because I've done that. I've definitely done that.
Yeah.
So it's more so I just want them to eat the 5 or 6 meals that are on or that are scheduled. And then so if two of them are going to be holiday meals, like, okay, then you have 4 of your planned meals going into it, and then you replace 2 of them at the end of the day, then I think it probably all balances out. If you really stuff yourself and you let yourself get away from it, I think a little walk around the neighborhood to end the night isn't a terrible idea. It might prevent some terrible gas like overnight and the following morning. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like, man, I especially like most people have that next day off, like if we're talking Christmas or Thanksgiving. And instead of even, not that it's a bad idea. If it's a rest day, yeah, go do cardio in the morning. But I would just wake up and go train if that's the case and put the food to use.
Yeah. No, I I think it's much more simpler than people make it.
Yeah.
That, and you just have to pick your battles. If you're staying on plan every other day, other than that one holiday, you've earned the right to go a little bit harder than you normally would. And guess what? Just get right back on the horse the next day. Your
Yeah.
weight will guaranteed be up because you're having probably more calories and there's a lot more sodium with the food you're eating. Maybe there's alcohol involved. That's going to cause you to hold some water weight. You didn't get 7 pounds fatter overnight. Relax, you'll sweat it out, your weight will drop. I've watched a lot of my clients, who I gave the same advice on Thanksgiving. Some of them were very okay with how they handled things. Some of them had a little bit of guilt. I just pointed it back to them. If you're feeling guilty, you get to reapproach Christmas Eve and Christmas and decide how you're going to go about it. My main rule is don't make any choices that are going to cause you to have guilt the following week. If you want to be the person that takes Tupperware to Christmas Day, do it. I've done it so many times. Yeah. And I in a full-blown off season, just because my digestion and my routine and my habits, that's just what's important to me. You can do whatever you want, provided you're not going to look for pity or have guilt over your decisions the next week.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like, man, I see so many people that like demonize the idea of bringing your food to Christmas or to Thanksgiving. And it's like, man, like if this is what makes a person feel good,
yeah.
Or like if this is just, if somebody's just on a mission, like if someone, last year got their ass kicked at a show and they're on a mission to be better or whatever the case is, like, man, let them do that. Like that's like you said, I've done it many times, even in more so, not more so, but like even in the off season, like that's a big time because like I said, I don't want to go eat at Christmas and not bring any food, eat one big meal and then lay around for 4 hours and not get any food in. Like I need to eat again in probably 2.5 hours. So yeah, that should help people with Christmas coming up, I think. I got one. So what and how much do you have advanced clients / competitors cruise on? And they put cruise in quotes.
The old cruise. It's going to be personal.
Yeah, it's not to cut you off, I'll let you go. But it's a good one because I think there are so many people that think, immediately some people think TRT with a cruise. And then I see some shit online where people are labeling fucking 650 milligrams as a cruise, which may be the case. I mean, depending on what you were at, but yeah, I'm interested to hear your thought on it.
Yeah. So the reality is the more muscle mass you pack on over the years and you're taking more and more of higher doses to get there, you are not going to be able to maintain that muscle mass on what you might have before on your cruise. So, for years I did 200 milligrams as a cruise. In hindsight, I probably might have went backwards a little more than I needed to. Yeah. And then spent the first leg of my blast recomping old tissue. If I'm being like, that's how I view things now. I hadn't, no regrets about it. It is what I did. It allowed me to get to a certain point to where I'm able to push things harder with PEDs now and have excellent blood work. You got to think about the long game. You can't shoot for the stars on your first cycle and then kind of stay there because you're only going to be able to go up to keep putting on new tissue after a certain point. So to answer the question, if it's someone younger, probably 150 to 200 would be a cruise. If it's someone super young and they've expressed like, hey, fertility is super important to me, I might take them completely off and run HCG and Clomid, and I have a whole PCT protocol of how we can get their own stuff firing again to put them in the best position to be fertile. That's probably the worst option if bodybuilding is important to you. If I'm being 100% honest, I don't think that's the best way to do things. If bodybuilding goals are at the top of the list, fertility isn't this huge issue that I've seen a lot of guys who bang gear for decades have kids. So I don't think it, the idea that if you do one cycle, you're infertile, it really applies. Now someone more advanced like myself, yeah, a cruise could be 250, 350. It could get as high as 500 milligrams, the bigger you are. That is what you're going to see heavyweights, super heavyweights, and pros probably drop down to. There's some genetic anomalies that can come down lower and then recoup a bunch of tissue. I'm not them. You're likely not them. So, you have to just do what's best for you while always keeping an eye on blood work. Blood work is almost ultimately going to dictate things. I want to stay on as much as I can, honestly. So if my blood work's good, I'm probably not, I'm going to cruise on a little bit more than if it were bad. If it were really bad, then yeah, I'll pull way down and fix things and then go about how I push things up differently maybe next time. But if I get a green light after a big push, I'm going to cruise on probably a little bit more than I did last time because I got the blood work to back it up.
100%. Yeah. And I think I'm glad that we could talk about this and just be honest, because I think it's a topic that not many feel comfortable, I guess, publicly or openly talking about the honest reality. Because in bodybuilding circles, like you said, like national heavyweights, national supers, and pros, like this is just a known thing. Like there are, I mean, I don't want to name drop or blow people up, but like you and I are in circles and we know big names. We have relationships and conversations with people. We've been in this industry for a long time. There are guys that everybody knows on this, that listen to this, that are at the Olympia every year. You guys know where I'm from. Put 2 and 2 together. How many of the guys that are at the Olympia are also from where I'm from? But for example, one of those guys, I remember telling him one time, I was at a point, I was on 750 tests as a start of a cycle. And he goes, 750 tests, that's what I cruise on. And it just, at the time, it blew my mind. I was like, what? But when you put 2 and 2 together, it makes sense. This is somebody that's one of the 6 most muscular people on planet Earth. So it really does just depend on, I mean, you nailed it. I'm not going to add anything new to what you said. It depends on how muscular you are. It depends on what your goals are. And it depends on how your blood work looks. I'm 100% with you, both with myself and my coaching. I have guys get their blood work done probably 2 weeks before a big push ends. And that will determine the following steps. If it's stellar and things are rolling in a good spot otherwise, that might mean that the cycle goes on for another 4 weeks. If it's good, but maybe the guy had gotten a little chubby or whatever the case is, maybe A1C is high, then yeah, maybe it's time to cruise, but it's probably going to be more than just your average 150 milligram test only cruise. And with me, depending on the guy too, I might split what the cruise is between some test and some master on or some primo, depending on like how watery they've been, if there's somebody with like a gyno history or propensity. And I'll be honest with you guys, I had a long off-season cycle. My coach wanted me to run a cruise prior to starting, letting it rip for a contest prep cycle. And that cruise wasn't all that low. It was 400 milligrams of test and 4 IUs of GH. Like that's a cycle for some people, depending on where they are in their journey. But that was done so with the idea of me, this is the biggest and heaviest I've ever been, and leading into the most important contest prep of my life. So with all that said, on top of that, my blood work and blood pressure were awesome. So it was like, okay, yeah, I can afford to leave this much in. So it really just depends. I have heard, like I said, even besides that one example, I've heard of more. I mean, there are guys that publicly talk about cruising on more because they're just way bigger than what their body ever wanted them to be. And I think that's something too. I think you and I are great examples. Like, when you're 6 feet tall or 5'11" and your natural, pre-bodybuilding walk around weight was 140 or 150 pounds, like your body didn't want to hold on to a ton of muscle tissue or, be super physiologically big. So it's just going to require a little bit more. So now with that said, like, when I get clients that are 24 and under, and let's say peak off season 220 and under, they're probably going to cruise on the standard, probably 200 milligrams of test only, maybe 140 milligrams of test and 80 milligrams of Masteron. If there's somebody that has gotten like gyno flare-ups in the past, something like that, mix it up a little bit. Is there anything like with that you do with clients? Because I've heard guys do this, and I'm just curious if you're somebody that uses this. Are you one of these people that has ever used like a milligram per body weight or a percentage of what their peak off season was?
Not like that I calculate out. I just kind of the way I'll taper someone, I'll taper down, like I'll taper up with gear. I don't just pull the rug out on everything over the, like if we had 3 compounds in, I'll pull a compound out, say Deca, and then I'll leave them on a test primo or test mass. Let them ride another week, maybe another week, and then I'll pull the doses down on both of those. And then I might, once I've seen blood work, we'll decide how low I'm going to go. But it's a planned downfall. And then once I see blood work, kind of is the, oh shit, we're going to pull way back. And this phase that you're going to be in just got extended. Or it's like, damn, we're good. This is baseline for you. You're good here at, maybe 400 to 600 total milligrams a year because your blood work's really good. If they don't want to, they can tell me like, hey, no, I'd rather go down to 200. Okay, cool. But I'm just letting you know that like I did that for a lot of years, and I could train with anybody on any dose, it doesn't matter. But I can look back and tell you that like I probably did lose ground that I had to then make up the next cycle I went on. So therefore I was losing time by how I was doing it. And I've always had good blood work. So if I could do it over, I probably would have kept those cruises a little bit higher, knowing that I always had really good blood work. But maybe I wouldn't have been able to get to the point I'm at now to where I can push really aggressively to where, you start to get in these circles where a lot of coaches are working with guys that, for the most part of a 52-week year, 44 of those weeks, you are full tilt. And then you might spend 8 that you're pulled back on whatever you deem a cruise, or you might even pull it down super low, knowing you're about to spend another 44 weeks blasting at different levels.
Yeah.
And that is the reality of national level bodybuilding. Maybe you'll have some people who can say that, no, I'm different. Cool. I've talked to enough national guys over the years now to tell you that that is the case for more people than it isn't.
Yeah, and it may not even be like I've come to realize that many people have their own definitions in terms of duration as to what a cruise is. Like those, like you talk about, like, there's 52 weeks in a year. A lot of these bigger guys might spend 44 of them full tilt, and it might not be 8 straight weeks of a lowered cruise. It might be 4 weeks here, and then in 25 weeks, it might be another 4 weeks, and then they're just right back on the gas. Which, to be honest, that's pretty much how my past year has looked. So that just is what it is. Yeah, I think that's a good one. I don't want to beat that one to a dead horse.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like things where we can be real, but also, provide value, because no one was having these conversations. I was just like, there wasn't a ton of conversations about gear and dosing. So
I'm with you. I look back at some of like the more traditional, like, TRT 150 milligram cruises that I did. And there are times that I'm like, fuck, man, like I almost feel like I got tricked into doing this. Like I wouldn't have done this if I'd known there was another way. But then also now I realize, looking back, like, man, maybe I wouldn't have been able to have an aggressive 8-month stretch and maintain my health if not for doing it that way for so long.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, there's a lot of 200 milligram cruises that I did. Might not even have GH in, to be honest, for parts of them
Yeah.
or some of them. And
Most of
I
them,
would
me.
I would watch the body weight drop,
Yeah.
and then I would watch it spike 3
Yeah.
weeks into a cycle.
Yeah.
And looking back, that just seems very counterproductive to what the end goal is always going to be. So again, it's going to be context dependent. It's going to be individual dependent. Your budget is going to play a role. Some people only have a certain amount of money that they can put towards PEDs, and they're kind of limited on duration and amounts, especially with certain compounds that are pricier, GH. But if we're putting out information for high level national bodybuilding or those that aspire to get there, this podcast is being recorded the day after nationals, which was easily the best national show across the board that we saw all year, females and males, as far as probably quality and depth. I mean, there was like 50 light heavyweights, 39 super heavyweights. Like, you don't see those kind of numbers anymore, hardly ever in open bodybuilding. So I was really, really glad to see that. So touching on that, what were your thoughts on nationals? I don't know if you caught any of it on the stream or you obviously caught it on Instagram. What did you think about it? First year it's in Texas.
I was impressed. Like you said, I mean, good to see like open bodybuilding alive and well. Especially like from light heavyweight up, seeing those numbers, that much quality. Like that's the next crop of open pro, like either 212 or open pros, or what the talent field that professional bodybuilding is pulling from. So it's good to see that it was alive and well. Super impressed with the guy that won the overall, the light heavyweight. I was glad to see that he was given the nod as the overall winner because I thought he was the best. He was the most complete. He was the most dense, even like per his frame. I think outside of like, there's a lot of guys. The numbers were big, and it was definitely the best show of the year. But there are still definitely a lot of people that I don't know if it's Instagram hype or not wanting to be lighter than a certain body weight or whatever. But there's just a lot of people that don't bring the conditioning, and like to me, seeing that, like, man, like that was the biggest show of the year, and it always is. Nationals, it wraps up the season, for the year, and it's no surprise like who's going to be there and how good everyone is going to be, or how high the standard is for the people that do well. So to come in and not be in shape, like we all know what being in shape looks like. So if that's you, I don't know what to say. I don't know what you're looking at or who you have in your circle. I guess some of these guys are self-coached, and like you said, Tommy, we can tell. Like it's very obvious when you're self-coached and you show up at a nationals and you're not in shape, because all the guys that are winning and placing well had a notable coach and brought it. So I was impressed. I mean, obviously this coming year, I've been in the heavyweights. You've been a heavyweight. That was a good class. It was definitely. I think there was a pretty clear top off though. From, if I'm being objective, at least from the photos, I wasn't there, but from the photos, it looked like there was like a pretty clear cut 1 and 2, and then pretty big gap between the rest of them. But even so, the top 5, it was quality. I was impressed with the supers. There's a lot of them, and there was a lot of them that were fucking big and in shape. So, yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts.
Yeah, I think I agree with the qual. I mean, I wasn't there, saw the stream, talked to people that were there, talked to other people who have been in bodybuilding or watching bodybuilding for a decade or more. Kind of the common consensus that the first call outs were here, and then the rest of the classes were here. So depth may have been big in numbers, but like you said, I think there's just a huge, I don't want to say misconception. I just think people are really undershooting themselves with how fat they're getting in the off season. They need to diet for longer. Jesus, dude, the train right now. I think a lot of people are under the thought process that they can diet for 16 weeks, and most of you aren't. Like, I was never one of those people. I could probably do it now, being how lean I stay and the amount of muscle I carry. But in my earlier years, I needed every bit of 20 weeks. And maybe a lot of people now I'm seeing, because unless you're going to be someone who's does not miss in the off season, you probably need 22 to 26 to really set yourself up to bring it on stage. This idea of this crash dieting prep style, while it might be fun and hype, it's not going to bring the best physique. Give me 1 second. You can talk. I just got to deal with this dog for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, some other thoughts on that, like in terms of diet duration, like Tommy said, there are several considerations into how long your contest prep should take. How muscular you are is a huge one, but then also how on the ball were you all off season? And only you know that answer. Even your coach doesn't necessarily know that answer. So if you've just been building the metabolism and training your ass off all off season, building the metabolism with good food, staying on plan, eating 6 meals, mostly from real food, whole food, you're in a place where once you change gears in prep, things happen right away and you can probably get away with less. But if you're one of these people that's like half in, half out during the off season and think you're just going to flip a switch and turn into a real bodybuilder in prep, 20 weeks probably isn't going to do it, especially if you're someone that likes to eat. And that's what, and you're going to cite having balance and getting chubbier than you should in the off season. And I think people that don't keep a coach through the off season are just shooting themselves in the foot. Like if you're talking about competing at nationals and you're self-coaching, I think you're a fool.
Yeah, I don't understand that thought process. Like the idea that you're gonna, one, that you have the knowledge and emotional control and bias to objectively look at yourself all off season that's a leap of faith. That's a huge leap of faith that I think 1% or less of people actually have, especially in the amateur ranks. I mean, I think I can think of a few pros who are pretty good at self-coaching themselves, but all those people worked with numerous coaches to get that feedback on their body by working with someone over the years, and then they took a chance on it. And it's still something that they're perfecting. And all of those people that I'm thinking of live full-time bodybuilder lifestyles. They don't have a 9-to-5 that they have to worry about, or most of them that I'm thinking of also don't have kids or other responsibilities. Like they are obsessed and meticulous with bodybuilding. So if you don't have that as your background, hire a coach, let them guide the process 365 days of the year. I mean, I've got a lot of people competing in 2024 who we were talking about the show timelines of when they'd be competing in 24 at the start of 23.
Yep.
These are people who I was like, hey, we need 18 months till you're on stage. Yep. I need that amount of time with you to, one, learn you, two, make you competitive. And there's no point in doing a show unless you're like, hey, I just want to do a show in 16 weeks. I don't care how I do. I just want to work really hard. Okay, I can get behind that. But if it's like, hey, I want to be successful, I want the most out of my investment with my time and money, like put in the effort year round. It's 24/7, 365. What you do in the off season does dictate how the prep will go. And like I said, I just think it's a case of a lot of people are just shortchanging how fat they actually are. There's tons of guys who think if they can see a shadow of 2 abs in the morning that they're 12% body fat. No chance. I don't care what your stupid DEXA scan says or what your calipers say. You have so much more fat in areas that you're probably not looking at in the off season, especially if you're not sending check-in pictures to a coach, that you're going to be hitting the oh shit button 12 weeks out, and it's too far gone. And the crash diets, even if you were to get semi-respectable condition, your body shows it. You look withered, you look stringy, you look tired, you look inflamed. All things you don't want to be adjectives used to describe your physique on stage by judges or people watching the show.
Yeah, because you're stressed, you're over dieted at that point, and your training has been shit for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's all we have in prep to maintain our muscle is really good training for as long as you possibly can. It's gonna die off at some point, but damn, like the main objective of prep in terms of training is to just like hold off on your training performance for as long as you can. And I think too, like nationals is always a great reminder of what the difference between ready for nationals and nationally qualified is. There's a lot of people that just show up, and like I see posts from people, and I mean, I respect people for going. I respect anybody that gets on stage and honestly did a good effort. I'm not going to say anybody that gets on stage, because now I guess it's a thing to get on stage as a fat person and like take pictures like it's a mockery of the sport. But anybody that puts a real effort into getting up on stage and goes and does it, they have a degree of my respect. But I see a lot of people now too that are like, you know, they go and they're just clearly not ready, and then they get walloped, and then the post is, you know, this was a good weekend, you know, I wanted to go and learn where I needed to improve and see where I stand. Like, man, like, do you not have anybody in your corner that's honest with you? Like, do you only have people in your corner that tell you that you're awesome all the time? Like, it should be fairly obvious where you stand. Like, you don't need to spend $4,000, go put yourself through a prep for nationals, and then go to Dallas and get your ass whooped to understand, like, you need another 20 pounds of muscle on this frame and to be in better conditioning than you were in. Like, it's not that big of a secret. Like, if you're not going to a local show and like wiping the floor with everybody in your class at minimum, where it's like a standout and people are coming up to you asking you which national level show you're doing, like, you don't belong going to nationals.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, I did US stage this year, not intentionally. It was just kind of like, it's right there. Another 5 weeks of pushing. Let me see where I stand. But that was also knowing that I didn't, you know, there was no delusion of winning. There was no delusion of a pro card. There was the idea of, I know I still need more muscle to make that thing closer to a reality.
But also, you won the second call out. Like, I'm talking about people that are at the end of the fourth call out, and they're like,
no,
oh,
I agree with you. I'm even stating for me, like, my plans this year did not have a national show planned, because it's very easy to be objective with yourself if you're just honest, but you have to be honest with yourself. You can't have these Instagram kills me, because people have these hyper inflated perceptions of themselves based off the captions they can type or the music they can put with their reels or the fan mob that they have in the comments gassing them up. And it's like, I just pick my battles, and I no longer give people constructive criticism, because no one views it as constructive anymore online. Maybe there's like 1% of people that would actually take it. Even if you were like, hey, respectfully, I'm just trying to say this without being a dick. Like, you could say all that. They're like, hater, why would you say that? And then the mob will attack you. And it's like, you're not even worth my time. Like, I can tell you're 10 weeks out and you shouldn't be getting on stage, but go ahead, get on stage. Enjoy last place. Enjoy making that post that you got last place and acting like it was a learning lesson. Like, if you need to get last place by things that were all in your control, bodybuilding probably isn't for you. You should honestly quit, because you're just hurting yourself. You're hurting your self-esteem. You're definitely hurting your wallet. It's pretty easy to look at the top 5 of a national show, look at your stage picks. Do I fit into this 5? If the answer isn't a resounding yes, I think I could, you're not ready. It's that easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and it's easy to me, like, the most like the real deal bodybuilders that I know and talk to, yourself included, if anything, like, those guys have to be reminded in a positive way where they stand. Like I
Oh
don't
yeah.
never like the like real deal bodybuilders that I'm friends with and speak to, I've never had to check them in terms of where they are. If anything, I have to remind them, I'm like, man, no, you're really good. Like you should go to nationals. Like you could be right there in the first call out in the right lineup. Whereas like, man, there's these people that just go and they, you know, they place for they win a 3-man class at the fucking Idaho Classic, and then they think that they're going to go to nationals and like have to be reminded that they're not where they thought they were. Like I could just never imagine lacking the self-awareness to the degree that you go to nationals like thinking that you're top 5 or even going to win, and then you're in the third or fourth call out and make a post like not the outcome that we wanted. Like what do you mean not the outcome? What did you want? What did you expect? Like you're not even close. So yeah, I mean nationals is always the best reminder for people of where shit really stands. So yeah, I mean I enjoyed seeing, I didn't watch the stream, I just saw photos and videos online, and you know, congratulations to all the guys that won pro cards. I think it speaks to the depth and the size of the show that that's the only show that they give second place pro cards to for bodybuilding. So yeah, I mean anybody that won one at that show is deserving.
Yeah, no, I mean it's always one of those things that it can, it's a good perspective for any level of competitor. You know, I had a lot of my clients messaging me that were telling me how motivated they were seeing nationals, which is good. I like that fire. I like that fuel. My counter to that for a lot of people who might be feeling that is, and something to think about, is how on point were you before nationals? Did you need nationals to make you work harder, or is your work level and ethics standardized to nationals could be 10 weeks away and you're working as hard as the weekend when it comes? It should add, I mean, I think it's human nature to drive a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of fleeting motivation from something like that. I mean, I'm sure I did get to a degree yesterday, but mine was more of just like, all right, that's the standard. That's the first call out is what I'm looking at. Like those guys are the standard.
Yep.
What do I need? It wasn't like, there's no point of cockiness. Like you said, like I hate the people that armchair quarterback and are like, well, if I was there, I definitely would have been up. Like, but you weren't. So you can't even say that because you didn't go through the process. You didn't peak. You didn't pay the money. You didn't do any of that. You were not there in that lineup. So don't try to put yourself in that lineup and say you would have been here if maybe you would. Maybe you would have got food poisoning 48 hours out and been last call-outs. You don't know. So the only way to really know where you're going to stand is to show up at your best. And to do that at a national show, I bet you could pull every pro card winner, and I'm willing to bet 90% plus all have coaches. I don't think there was anybody self-coached that turned pro. Maybe you'll find one anomaly.
Maybe.
And then I would venture to say a lot of those guys have been working with, guys and girls have been working with coaches for a long duration of time. They didn't just start working 3 weeks out of nationals or 16 weeks out. Some of those people have done multiple pro qualifiers already this year to get their, you know, how much money did they spend in 2023 alone on all of this lifestyle that we live combined? These are all things you have to think about. I know we have a lot of younger listeners, so I drive that home. Like, it is an investment to attempt to turn pro or win at something. And that the more and more I see and talk to people of the younger contingent, it just seems like everyone wants to find shortcuts of how they might get there. And it's like with the hunger hacks and the cardio substitutes with steps. And no, you cannot shortcut like some of these people that turn pro have tried a handful of times. I know a bikini girl who's done 7 pro qualifiers in order to turn pro this year. It takes time. It's going to take money. It's going to take, you know, getting punched in the, we talked about getting punched in the face recently. How much are you willing to take to pursue that goal? So I didn't mean to go off on a rant, but it's, you know, it always does kind of, I love nationals because it's the last show of the year and people are either going into the Christmas holiday, like and they're going to stay on plan and pursuing bodybuilding because they love it and they want it, or they're just going to have a piss poor attitude about how they placed or whatever, and they're going to, a lot of the people in the last call were probably there because of condition, and you are probably the people that should keep it tighter through the holiday season. You shouldn't go off the rails with your diet because you weren't in shape.
Right.
So something to take note of, the idea that if you were out of shape, you get to balloon up into the offseason. No, you don't get your rebound will not be the same as someone who's peeled. They'll just get fatter.
Yeah. And that guy, I have to call him out too. Jamal Musbah, I think his last, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He was second at North Americans in the heavyweights,
Yep.
Continued his season all the way through nationals, and then just won the heavyweights. So that's a great example of that.
Yeah, he's an Arizona guy.
Yeah. So shout out to him. That's an awesome year and a really good example of like persevering and just living this, like being fully invested and living this all the time. But yeah, I think that's we're gonna wrap it up there.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good little Sunday rant. So
Yeah,
jump into the Facebook group if you guys aren't on there.
Yep.
Muscle Media Network. One of us will approve you and throw up your show picks, throw up your off-season picks, throw up your questions, topics. It's a good place just to talk bodybuilding with other people who like and talk bodybuilding.
Then it's a private group too. So if you want to talk gear, whatever the case is, it's a good spot for it. So thanks everybody for watching. Tommy Styles, Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, guys, we are out.